There is a place in the red heart of the country where the night speaks. Locals swing wide of it. Some roads pretend it isn't there. In a small clearing ringed by mulga, a fire burns where no one has sat for decades. It does not flare or fade. It waits. And if you sit by that fire, the old people say, you don't leave by your own feet. At the last roadhouse before the nowhere, a woman with tired, kind eyes lifted her chin toward the west. Not all fires are for us, she said. If you find it, don't give it your name. 5 travelers heard the warning and went anyway. Maya lived behind a camera. She believed carefulness was a kind of permission the land could feel. What she didn't see was how often she heard no as a dare. Ben loved her the way soft earth holds rain. He believed a trip could anchor a life, nor was a doctor who trusted names for things. She knew the body's thresholds and thought knowledge could barter with fear. Eli, a geologist, liked rock logic. He wanted the fire to be an anomaly he could catalogue. Jono drove. He was local in the honest way. He knew which places were not his. He had been told not to go near this one. He believed that meant he could keep others away. They left with water, fuel, plans. The sun went down like a coin. The wind combed the spinifex. When they stopped for the night, it wasn't at a marked site, just a small rise with a clearing and old tire ruts that felt like a permission no one had the right to give. Ben saw it first, a shallow bowl blackened by time, ringed with stones. At the bottom, a dull orange glow like the memory of heat. We camp somewhere else, Jono said. We should douse it, Nor said, moving like a nurse toward a pain. The water turned to steam with a soft sigh. The glow held. The ground around the bowl wasn't only dirt. It was etched, curved lines and small marks like creeks on a hand-drawn map. They looked old. They looked recent. They looked alive. The air pressed close. The wind washed through the mulga, and the fire said a name. Nor! Not loud, not harsh. A kitchen voice. Come here. Her hands opened, and the empty jug fell and lay on its side like a mouth. Ben, the fire said softly. Ben! Maya, it said, and somehow it put her childhood in the vowel. The syllables she had tried to fold quiet when she moved schools. Eli, Jono, if you find it, the woman had said, don't give it your name. No one spoke. The fire already had their names. They should have left. Instead they stayed, making their own small fire away from the old one, a nervous nest of sticks. Their shadows trembled on the mulga. A night bird called and dropped 2 notes into the circle like coins. The little fire tried to make the night ordinary. Tell a story, Eli said, because people do that when the dark pushes close. Not about here, nor said. Not about home. Not about family. Don't use names. Ben began a story anyway, small and harmless as a tea bag. Halfway through, he stopped because of the movement at the edge of their vision. Across the clearing, their shadows kept talking. Their voices stilled, their shapes did not. The shadows of their heads threw back and laughed. Their hands gestured. They finished the story to someone else. We need to go, Nor said. Right now. They rose without running. They moved toward the truck like people crossing a museum floor. Between them and the doors, a voice spoke from the trees in Maya's voice. Left your camera. She turned before she could stop herself. On the crate by the little fire lay her granddad's old film camera, the one that smelled like bread and wool the day it became hers. She had packed it. It sat there now, lens up like an eye waiting to be opened. Not that one, she whispered when Ben reached to keep her. I'm not leaving it with that. The leather strap was warm, as if a hand had just let go. The engine would not turn. The key clicked and went quiet. Jono pressed his forehead to the wheel and prayed like a kid, "Please let us leave, and I won't bring anyone again." The knight leaned in to listen. Somewhere far off, a low drone rose and fell, not quite wind, not quite instrument, like breath through hollow wood. "We walk," Nor said, "to the road. People come in the morning." "Stay together," Jono said. "Don't speak, don't answer." They stepped out of the clearing. The sand under Nor's foot made a sound like glass settling. She looked down. Around the old bowl the ground had glazed in a slick green, heat-formed, a desert bottle. In it the stars lay trapped with their faces. "Don't step there," Jono said, then added a second later, "Don't stand where you are either." The etched lines darkened with shadow, a soft maze. They stepped over again, like crossing small streams. At the mulga edge the air tasted like sap and iron. The dark ahead thickened with whispers. The voices that came were not memories you could shake. They had edges, they had breath, a father's cough, a mother's laugh, a lover's sleep-tangled calling, the small noises of mornings and last nights. "Do not answer," Jono said, and the sand swallowed his voice. Nor stopped. "If she could call me from anywhere and I didn't go," she said, "wouldn't that be wrong?" "We don't know what this is," Maya whispered. "It knows us," Nor said, and her voice was astonished and hurt. "How?" "We told it," Eli said, sudden and bitter. "Our shadows. They told everything." They moved sideways through the murmur until the road appeared the way an absence appears. The surface underfoot felt like an agreement. They walked. The moon slid up. The desert breathed. The smell changed, sweet and metallic. Nor said, "We're going back," and they were, without turning, back to the clearing as if the road had stood up and guided them. The truck waited. Their little fire begged forgiveness as it burned. The old fire's flame lined politely as if it had all night. It did. From the silent radio came a crackle. "Camp 5, check in." Jono stared as if the radio had misdialed. He turned the knob, the light flickered. The voice was a man's, clipped, weary from another time. "Camp 5, check in. If you've got fuel slop, you pull it. Don't leave it for the next crew." "A stockman," Eli whispered. "Old days." "Camp 5, the radio said again. "We're missing 3. Don't sit there and make it 4. Nor leaned close, soft with a bedside voice. "We hear you. Say your names," the radio said cheerfully, like a foreman with a pencil. "Say your names so we can mark you down, then go. Go now." "No," Maya said. Everyone heard the steel. The radio hissed and fell to breathing. In the glove box, beneath maps and receipts, Jono found a battered notebook bound with an old rubber band. Not his. Pencil script, mid-century, rubbed and rescued. Camped under mulga, flame in old bowl ticks like a heart. Boys told me to steer clear, went anyway, thirsty for company. Flame knows names, wouldn't say mine. Heard Jono spelled wrong, call from the timber. Stranger sight than any, my own shadow getting up without me. "We should go." "We don't. If we leave, tell Mary the brooch sits in the bottom tin." Maya's eyes lifted. "Maybe it needs a story to end. Or it wants company," Eli said. "We'll give it nothing with names," Jono said. "We wait for daylight." They sat around their small apology of a fire as far from the old bowl as they could stand. They told stories that had no owners, nor told of a woman who knew the difference between the quiet of wings arriving and leaving. Eli told of a mountain that took 1,000 years to stand up. Ben told of a tram driver who stopped between stops to help an old man down. Jono told of a dog that followed his father across stations and would not cross the final threshold. Maya said nothing. She held herself closed and counted her breaths. The old fire said her name 3 times in 3 rooms of her life. She did not answer. At the edge of the clearing, a shape moved. Not a bird, not a wallaby. A shadow with no one to cast it, gliding along the ground like smoke. It paused at the etched lines, lifted as if pulled, and made a small, unmistakable human gesture. "Come." "Don't," nor whispered, to whom she didn't know. The shadow turned its back and walked into the inner circle. The old fire rose and kissed it, if kissing is what you call the way heat can make a shape thinner without burning. In the glassed sand a star slid and did not streak. In the radio came a sound like a long, homesick breath. "Is that what happens if we go?" Eli asked, the corners of his voice torn. The fire said his name, indulgent. "Eli." He stared at it as if shame were a landscape. He had been a kind man in ways that added up to cowardice once, and a tunnel had fallen later. Ben looked at him with a new, hard thing in his eyes and then looked away. "I need one rule," Maya said softly. "Tell me daylight changes something." "Don't sit, don't speak. Don't give names," Jono said. "And one more auntie told me, if something calls you in the night, let it say your name 3 times. Don't answer. Leave while it's still using you as an echo." "It said our names more than 3, Maya said. "Fair game," Ben said, and the words hurt him coming out. At the last page of the old notebook, the pencil went faint, as if the writer had moved across a threshold while writing. "Went to fetch water, kept circle, men asleep." Fire said my name in the voice from under the tin roof when wind scared me as a kid, didn't answer. Second time same, third time it said it like my mother before she died. I went. The rubber band perished in the dust. "We wait," Jono said. "When light comes we walk." "Promise," Maya whispered, as if the dawn were a person. He nodded. "Promise." The hour before light is cruel in hospitals and deserts. They practice not being food, breathing shallow, thoughts small. The old fire murmured rooms and childhoods and little jokes that hurt. Far off, the low drone went on, shaped like a didgeridoo's throat note, but colder, like landscape remembering breath. The wind threaded the mulga and made leaves speak. It lightened, the sky unpeeled. The mulga lifted their faces from blackness to brush. "We're going," Nor said, and her smile was ugly and beautiful both. She didn't look at the old fire. They threaded the lines without looking down, reached the road, and walked. The air didn't thicken, the voices did not follow. The line unspooled like a vein. Then a sound so ordinary it broke something between their spines and minds. A kettle beginning to boil, a tin cup on wood, the harmony of breakfast. Nor's head turned before she could stop it. It had her mother's laugh tucked inside, the one from a day before pain settled in for good. "Don't," Jono said. Nor stopped. It takes very little to stop a person. Dust, a memory, a name spoken in the right tone. She walked back toward the clearing as if pulled by a thread tied to her ribs. In the growing light the markings were a wheel, 2 circles, lines like spokes, a web, a sentence. At a spoke's end, Nor placed her foot without tripping, the way obedience looks when it believes itself love. Ben started forward. A weight like a hand, light as advice, rested on his shoulder. He didn't move. Jono didn't call her name. He had learned a little too late. Nor stood at the inner ring. From that distance, the old fire looked small, a lamp in a sick room. It said her name. She answered with her body. She leaned. Maya ran like someone who has never run and still tries. The air near the inner ring went wrong, thin like high air, thick like syrup, then neither. Her hands reached and kept reaching. Her fingers never touched Nor's shoulder. She fell onto the etched line and swore. Nor looked at Maya. Her eyes held sorrow big enough to float a world. "I have to see," she said. "Please," Maya said. Nor stepped into the circle, and the fire rose to meet her like a mother at an airport. Her face softened, her shoulders dropped. She breathed in, and the old fire breathed with her. She smiled, and the sound that came out of the boys behind was a noise men don't admit to making. She made one more small movement forward, and then she was not standing at all, not falling either. She was gone. Maya did not scream. Screaming is a message, and she was done speaking to this place. The day was full. Insects began their arguments. The road lay there patient. "Maybe she's okay," Eli said in a voice that wished for belief and had no one to ask. "We are leaving," Maya said, ash on her lips, ash under her nails. Now, they walked. For a few breaths, the old fire did not say their names. It felt like luck. On the 21st step, a throat cleared ahead. Ben's father's little cough, the one before he admitted he'd lost the house and no one had died. It came from their small campfire, not the old one. The little circle they had made glowed as if someone tended it. His father sat there with a mug held the way he held life, carefully, as if he didn't deserve it. Ben smiled without meaning to. He stepped. Maya held his wrist and said his name the way she had not said any name all night. He stopped in the air, then set his foot back down. His father lifted his head, and it was a good trick made of light and longing. Ben cried like a child, the honest way men cry when no one is keeping score. Jono looked away to give him privacy. The day was already stealing. Jono turned the radio as if it might open like a door. The light clicked on. A voice spoke like a hand bumping a table from underneath. "Camp 5, 1 missing. If you hear your name, hold. If you hear your mother's voice, hold both fists. If you hear the wind in the shed roof, don't go on the veranda." The words grew older. The accent shifted as if the land were turning a page. A breathy note like a song with no words came, young and surprised, ancient and ordinary. The dial did nothing. The air held it up. The old fire called Maya in her granddad's cadence from the day he handed her the camera like a blessing wrapped in bread smells. "No," she said, and she meant the word like a locked door. She took the notebook to a blank page, wrote with a shaking hand that tried to be a spine, "We are leaving. We owe you nothing. We will not sit. We will not speak. We will not give names or stories. We will go without a word. We will not look back." She laid the page at the edge of the markings and weighted it with a small stone. She pulled Ben's sleeve, tilted her chin to Jono, nodded at Eli, walked. They did not speak. They did not say each other's names. They did not acknowledge any shape moving in the scrub. They reached the bend, 10 steps, 15, 20, free. On the 21st, the little campfire went out with a soft exhale, a small noise that changed nothing and everything. Ben flinched as if a string had twitched in his chest. Eli stumbled on a stone and went to one knee. At ground level he heard himself the way the earth says a name, as the rumor of all footsteps. He pushed up. His palm came away black with ash that hadn't been there a second ago. His mind said contamination and meant mercy. His body said the circle had always been under their feet. Jono turned and broke the rule that had kept them from breaking. He said Ben's name hard enough to crack the air. Ben turned because he was made of the sound. The turn closed the sentence. There was no dramatic tearing, no scream. only the kind of silence people make when they agree, and the old fire breathing in deep. Light expanded in a place light doesn't move. The smell of wet iron came and went. Maya felt her own shadow, dear and obedient, rise up like a friend and embrace her and lean with her toward brightness. At dawn, a ranger followed a thin plume of smoke he had watched all his adult life without it ever being on a roster. He stopped short of the markings because people who live long out here learn to stop short. He saw a truck with doors open, a tent half-zipped, a mug blackened and overturned like a beetle. He saw footprints making spirals and turns and then stepping toward the inner circle and not one set stepping away. He lifted his radio and didn't speak. He didn't like to speak to this place. On the road, a ute rattled by, a life going to work. The ranger bowed his head to the morning's clean blank and stepped back 1, 2, 3 paces, turned and walked to the truck. In the glove box, he found a notebook. He didn't open it. He put it in his pocket like a bird. At the roadhouse, the sign cracked in the heat. The woman behind the counter looked west when no one was looking. Worry lived in her eyes alongside something else. Respect that is not defeat. The understanding that some places keep their own ceremonies and we are not invited to clap. Weeks later, a cattleman on the far side of the range found a camera lying in a dry wash where no flood should have been. He brought it to the police. A bored man at a desk printed the film because people can't help themselves. There were photos of stars. In one frame, faint as a smudge, a hand reached for a patch of sky and did not touch. What the land keeps, it keeps. What the fire remembers, it remembers. This is not punishment. It is not mercy. It is a fact. On clear nights, if you stand far enough away and look with a good heart, by which I mean a heart that isn't greedy, you can see the fire breathe, a tiny exhale in the middle of a place where the wind carries a low, long note, no tune at all, just breath older than singing. Don't go there. If you go, don't sit. If you sit, don't let it know the art of your name. If it knows you anyway, and it will, because names sweat out of us, stand together and do not speak. Walk together and do not look. And maybe, if the morning is in a forgiving mood, you will be allowed to keep your shadow. Long after the ranger filled in a report and forgot to turn it in and remembered and forgot again, a traveler in a city sat in the dark with a supermarket candle that smelled like a fruit that never grew here. He listened to this story, told low and careful, and thought of all the things that had named him and how he had answered. He blew out the candle, because sometimes wisdom looks like retreat. In the smoke, he thought he heard his name in a voice that was his own. He didn't answer. He went outside and looked up, and made a promise to the stars he could not keep and kept anyway. Out there somewhere, a ring of stones waits in a gap the maps don't hold. The marks fade and darken and grow back because wind is also a pen. The old fire breathes. When it says your name, it will not shout. It will say it like someone who loves you, because that is the only voice we follow to the thing that takes us. By dawn, the fire was still burning. The travelers were gone.